Chairman of GENBAND, David Walsh.
Well, we wanted to wake you up. I hope that did the trick. I think it woke the whole hotel up. Well, they were trying to figure out what they were going to do as the intros. This actually wasn't my idea. But they were throwing around a lot of different things. One, I heard they wanted me to come out and dance to Gangnam Style. So I said, whoa, we're way off course here. And then somebody was saying, we'll just launch them out of a cannon. So this was the happy compromise, but welcome and thank you for all being here. And how about a warm applause for the drummers? I mean, they were here last night. And welcome everyone. And first I want to start by thanking all of our sponsors. Samsung, Ericsson, and F5. We couldn't have done this without you. You guys have just been fantastic partners and helped us pull this all together. So quick round for our sponsors. And then I want to thank everyone for making this trip. I mean, I was told there's 800 folks that traveled from 40 countries to be here. So we really appreciate the effort. I mean, we know how busy you all are, and not just in business, but in our personal lives. And to come out and spend 4 days with GENBAND, we couldn't ask for anything more. So thank you very much. Okay, so what I'd like to start off by saying is what's really important. Every successful leader knows one thing, and that is that relationships matter. And that's why we wanted to bring everyone to here together. And we use a term in New York called plotting and scheming. So what we want to do is some plotting and scheming with you this week to see how we can position all of the companies here better in the future. So for me, this is really interesting because it's been a long, winding road for me in the telecom industry that started in 1976. The first introduction, I was in high school, and I had a part-time job, and I was installing a Northern Telecom SL1. Believe it or not. And I was putting it into New York Medical Center, but it was in their psychiatric hospital. It was the largest mental institution in the United States. And I got to tell you, boy, did I see a lot while I was there. It was amazing. But one of the first things that got me excited is I heard Alice Cooper was locked up in the place. So I was spending most of my time, anytime I get a 15-minute break, I'd like run around to try to find out which ward he was in. So, and eventually I found out he was in the ward where, no surprise, the alcohol rehab ward. And he was an unbelievable pool player. So somehow, way back when, I connected rock and roll into telecom, and it's been a great journey ever since. So you never know what's going to bring you into an industry. You never know what connection is going to be the important connection. But there's a lot of personal connections here this week. I hope you enjoy all of them. Now, think for a second how you're spending your life. Me, I often go to bed, I've got the TV running, I got my tablet by my side, I got my phones. My daughter comes in, she's, "Dad, move all this stuff away, it's not healthy for you." Because I have all my appliances and all my devices all around. So, you know, we wake up in the morning, we go right to our screen. We check our agenda, we go look at weather, we want to see, you know, what the temperature's out. Is it raining? Should I change? What should I do? Should I alter what I'm doing? You look at your calendar to get yourself prepared. On your way to work, depending on where you are, you're inundated with all kinds of digital media. Screens are everywhere. In case you didn't notice, just coming down in the elevator to get here, how many screens did you pass that were sending information to you? Now this information is two-way. You can interact with it. So the digital life, it's all around us, and it's more interactive. It's not just broadcast, but we're constantly communicating with it. And so what's happening is that we're reaching out and being touched by this new digital world we live in all day long. And the beauty of that, and for everybody here, is that none of this can happen without networks, intelligent networks, and secure networks. So what's happening is this ecosystem now is moving really fast. And companies have an opportunity. They've got to make a decision. Do they want to rise with the tide? So do they want to lead? Do they want to follow, or they want to just get run over? Because you have to decide. Deciding to do nothing is a decision. So having us all together, I think, is a great opportunity where we can figure out what do we have to do to become the leaders in the industry. In a minute, I'm going to show you a quick slide, but here's how we live. It's the internet in 60 seconds. So as an example, here's some quick facts. More video games are sold than DVDs. I'm not surprised I got kids, and it's amazing how much time they spend on these gaming machines, and I'm always in trying to get my kids, hey, you got to get off that thing, come on down and have a conversation. And and we're always in arguments about, turn that Xbox off. So the other day, my son, he's always giving me excuses. My middle son, he loves gaming. He said, but Dad, I don't know if you realize, but surgeons who grew up using video games, they make 37% fewer mistakes. I said, that's great, Stephen. Now turn off your Xbox. And he has all kinds of ways of hiding when he's on the Xbox, but there's a couple dead giveaways he haven't figured out. He doesn't know how I know he's using the game machine when I come in. He hears me coming up the stairs, but when you go into his room, it's always 5 degrees warmer because the thing puts out so much heat. It's like a little furnace in your room. And we're going to talk about that later on, that trend of power and heat a little later on. But here's an example. Amazon sells more e-books than printed books. Now, if you think about just culturally, you go into a town. What is a town defined by? A post office, a library? Are these things even needed anymore? I mean, the other day, the government was debating in the U.S. whether they should shut the post office down on Saturday. How about Monday through Friday? I mean, do we even need them anymore? So the world is changing. 60 billion emails a day. By the way, small detail, 97% of that is spam. Here's the spam model. 1 conversion in 12 million attempts. That's all it takes to be successful in spam. Now, that's mind-boggling, but that's the world we live in. 15 billion videos are viewed online every month. 1 million domain names are registered every month, which is kind of cool because you don't register a domain unless you have something to say, an idea, a thought. So these are 1 million ideas every month that are now available to the world that weren't available before. So the barrier now to get through and get your message out has completely been changed. 1.8 billion people are connected to the net, and it won't be long before all 6 billion wireless users today will have access to the net through 4G. So if you think about it, 1.8 is going to 8 to 10 billion. Think about the changes that we're going to have to make to be able to accommodate that type of users. So the world has completely changed, and it's all happening in 60 seconds. I'm going to show you a quick clip, and I hope you enjoy it. So it's, but that's the world we live in 60 seconds. And the music I selected, I like the quote about ADD because people think of that as something negative. I don't know how you function unless you have it now, because you have to, you got to be looking at 50 things at once or you're just not connected. So this is a new world that we live in, and it's changing very quickly. So here's a couple of things that I use. I don't know, you might use them, that are really cool. So one is Uber. For somebody like me who's moving around all the time, transportation is a real problem. I mean, in New York, that's where I'm from. I mean, you've got to grab a yellow cab. You're taking a chance on your life by standing in the middle of the street. You call the black limo services, the car services. Nobody tells the truth. Oh, the car will be there in 30 minutes. Well, I meant an hour. I meant an hour and 30 minutes. It's really inefficient. So this company, Uber, what they've done is all they are is a virtual company. They have an application. You just go on, you say, they know where you are through their app, and you just pop, where do I want to go? And immediately broadcast out to all the Uber audience, which is all the black limo guys who were formerly using the limo service companies. And it says, here's a potential customer, and if they're close, they hit it. And then immediately you get a confirmation, here's your driver, here's your car, here's where he is, and you can watch him come to you. It's really amazing. You can see he's turning the corner. You can call him if you want. And then when you get in the car, you don't have to do anything because you have an account, it's already set up, it hits your credit card, give you a statement at the end of the month. And there's a feedback loop to these systems, so you can kind of rank your experience, which has this feedback loop of making it better. So this is a market of putting buyers and sellers together based on location. So what's happening now in our new world of being connected is everything is for sale. Everything. And markets are being made in everything that's for sale. And location now is a new way to make it more effective. So Uber is an amazing service. Another one is Open Table. This is just restaurants. So all the restaurants put their tables online, and if you want to go and pick up a reservation, you don't have to make a lot of phone calls. You don't have to be looking through Yellow Page. You don't have to do any of that stuff anymore. You just go to Uber, figure out. You can look at restaurants by which ones are closest. How affordable that what food you want to eat, and you can book a reservation. You can also comment on your experience. These are virtual companies. There's nobody there. They're just software that sits in the cloud, and it runs. These are enormously profitable businesses. Uber, they get a small take on every time they book a reservation, and there's no people. These are great business models, and they're great for the consumer. So everything is for sale, and it's one big exchange now of buyers and sellers being put together because everyone's connected, and we have location-based services now. We live differently. Search, date, search. My single friends tell me about this, but this is amazing. 1 in 8 married couples last year met online. 1 in 8. This is something that, it's a new phenomenon. This is how people get to know each other. So as an example, those red pins on that San Francisco slide and Cape Town, 2 examples, those are people available for date. There's all these different dating services down there. If you came in early on Sunday and you wanted a date, you could just load in your preferences, and it'll tell you right here in the Orlando area who is available for your date. You get your date, and then you call Uber, and they will pick you up, and they will take you to your restaurant that you booked on Open Table, and that might be the new triple play. So we live differently, and I'm sure you all see this at home. I do. That's sort of like me with more hair. But that's what I'm like a lot of Saturdays and Sunday afternoons, sitting in front of one of the, I don't know how many of these things we have around the house, watching sports and news and surfing the net, making phone calls. It's just amazing what you can do with your new remote, if you will. But, I grew up, and I don't know how many of you grew up, about my age, I bet many of you are. But when I was a kid, the remote control was a pair of pliers. I don't know if you had this, but they sat on top of the black and white television because the knob got broken off years ago. That was the original remote control. And, of course, everyone had a brother or sister who was responsible for the rabbit ears, moving them around so that you could tune into one of the 3 channels that were available. That world is gone. There's unlimited channels. In fact, the whole idea of linear content that's fed to you time of day, sequenced to you, that's changing. And think about what that means. Think about what advertisers are dealing with. So now you can just strip out all the ads. You don't have to watch it. When the content comes to you, I'll just strip out the ads. Or if I leave the ads in, as soon as the ad comes on, I just go to one of my other 30 devices I have in my house and I start consuming content. So now advertisers say, gee whiz, just because the show is running doesn't mean I'm watching the advertising. So there's just a major changes going on in the advertising world where people think, okay, well, I got to be able to embed the message in the content itself and make it actionable so people can't remove it. So a lot of people are trying to avoid in this connected two-way world to be avoided being reached out and touched. I know I am. I don't want to be my private space avoided. But at the same time, there's all the advertisers who are trying to reach out and touch you. And this is a whole new change that the whole industry, the content and advertisers are all thinking through. So it's not just how we consume it, it's what's going around the consumption of content that's really important, because in the past, most all of that content was paid for by advertising. And if that changes, then what? Over the top is off the charts. Here's 2 services that I use all the time. I use WhatsApp and I use Viber. Now there's a bunch of them. Some do text and phone calls. Some do text, phone calls, and video. Some do text, phone calls, video, and pictures. Some are really good just at pictures and text. They're all a little bit different, and they all have a separate community that's a closed community that you can use, but they're really interesting services, and they're not going to go away because they're really effective, and for the most part, they are free. So these are 2 that I use. There's tons of other ones, but they're becoming very loyal users, but they do lack certain things that we are accustomed to. For example, being ubiquitous. I mean, we're kind of used to that. The telephone, as an example, the public telephone network is ubiquitous. So we want that, even though we want these over-the-top services, we also want them to be ubiquitous. So one of the things our group here is going to be talking about is what kind of technology that we're developing to put in the hands of you guys so that you can help federate these types of services, because that's the evolution of what we see is happening in over-the-top. Wi-Fi is everywhere, including up in the air. And don't get these pins mixed up. These are different. These are locations. These aren't people, and they're not restaurants. But they are locations where Wi-Fi exists. So if you think about the I would call it the law of wireless gravity, meaning a bit will find its way onto the lowest cost infrastructure as fast as possible. So I don't know how many connected devices there are here today, but there's probably hundreds of them. And a lot of them, the way you're getting your connectivity is you're going right through this building, about a half mile away, to another building that has a radio on top of it, and you're using spectrum to get there. Can you imagine how inefficient that is compared to using the fiber that's already in the building, the Wi-Fi that's throughout the hotel? So what we see is that there's going to be a massive amount. The network is already out there. It's called Wi-Fi, and people are going to start connecting it like go-go. But more and more people are demanding to have connectivity everywhere they go, including up in the air. So spectrum is constrained. It's really expensive. There's only so much of it. There's all kinds of things you can make it more efficient. You can squeeze more in it. There's math and science that allows to make it more efficient. But at the end of the day, it's constrained compared to fiber, which you can put in the ground and you can span whenever you want. The result of this is there's going to be a whole host of new carriers in the marketplace. And here's an example of what's happening in Turkey. In Turkey, everybody's got a cell phone. When I first went there, I was shocked. It was amazing to see every single person walking around with a cell phone. I didn't realize that people in Turkey were probably more connected than they were even here. But they didn't have 4G services, and there was a lot of talk about moving from 2 and 3G to 4G. And because Turkcell and Avaya and Vodafone, the three providers, they want to offer a better experience to their customers. They want to provide broadband, wireless broadband. So they all were going to the government saying, let's open up some auctions for some spectrum. So the government started thinking about it, said, well, that's not a bad idea. I can sell spectrum, I can make money, I can put that to work. But maybe there's another idea. Maybe what I ought to do is not just sell you the spectrum, maybe I should take the spectrum and build a network and sell you access to it. So in other words, why would it make sense to build 3 identical networks when we could build one better network? Now, we don't know if this is going to happen, but think about countries as possibly becoming carriers over time. It could happen. Not only countries, but take a look what's going on in cities. This is New York City. New York City is looking to become a carrier. They have 11,000 phone booths out there, and they're going to turn them into hotspots, and they're going to turn them into interactive kiosks. So the city is looking at, wow, I've got a really valuable footprint of people and demographics. And I can build my own network to serve those, and I can interconnect with everybody else, and I can create a ubiquitous experience. And I can create services, and I can create revenue for the city, not tax people, create revenue. So if you think about it, the city can actually become an advertising agency because they can start delivering content around these geographies that they control because they've got these hotspots. So you can actually see cities getting into the game. And then you go step down further, it's really anywhere where people gather. So whether you're in a university, a mall, a stadium, or a hotel, like this hotel has some arrangement with a technology provider who sets up the Wi-Fi. So hotels like Sheraton, Hilton are their own little telecommunications carriers. And so wherever people gather, networks are going to be built. And the reverse is true. Wherever networks are built, people will gather. And that's that flywheel that we're living in today. Now, if you have all of these connected people, and millions of applications, billions of connected devices, as an investor, we start thinking about what does that mean? Like, where does that say we could find fertile ground from an investment standpoint? So a couple of areas, I spend all of my time looking at investments in the telecom and tech space. And so we're always looking at where the trend is and how do we participate in that? So 2 major concerns come from all of this stuff I just explained. One is security, and the other is data center infrastructure. So the first one, I've got this slide called, it's time to power up and cool down. What we've seen over the last decade is this massive compression in cost on processing. So processing costs have come down. Storage costs have come down. Telecom bandwidth has come down. But power costs have continued to increase. So power costs have gone up in the last decade, 50 to 100%. At the same time, the consumption of power in these data centers to run all these applications, to have all these connected devices, this has been a massive increase in power consumption to be able to support this. So we're going to need massive facilities to put all of this content and all of these applications in. And look at Google. They are installing 125, this is one company, 125,000 servers every month. So there has been, while you've seen just all this change, that our life is different and how we're, all the changes that have happened. I was, from when I was a kid with the set of pliers, in 30 years, there hasn't been any development in the infrastructure to support the applications that we are dealing with every day. There's been no improvement. It's amazing, but that in fact is the case. So a couple things. If you look at a rack, 2 racks of equipment 10 years ago, now you can put that on one board, but that board's really hot. And the boards are like little ovens. So these data centers have become massively dense. They use an enormous amount of energy, power, and cooling, right? Because every dollar of power to power all these servers, you need a dollar of cooling to cool it. And we're using enormous amounts of water. Here's one example of that. In the US, we use 5 trillion gallons of potable water a year. 38% of that water is used to cool buildings. And the biggest segment of that is data centers. So data centers are power hogs, they're water hogs, they're highly inefficient, and we're completely dependent on them to do our business. So we've been looking around in that space to see if there's something different, and we found something that we think is really special. The company's called Intertek, and what they've done is they use refrigerant. So think about how a data center cools something. Imagine this is a data center. In the middle of the data center is a cabinet. In the middle of the cabinet is a shelf, and in the shelf is a box, and in the box is a card, and on the card is a processing chip, a CPU or a memory chip that generates heat. So what we do today is somewhere out there in this chiller plant, which is in a data center about the size of this room, we have compressors and pumps and chilled water and fans, and we take cold water and we take fans and we blow air all the way out to that chip to try to cool it. Does that make any sense? I mean, I look at that and say, how in the love of God have we not changed the way we cool things? That makes no sense to me. So what these guys have come up with is they use refrigerant, which is 75 times more efficient. Refrigerant is a chemical compound that cools when it seeks heat. So what they do is they run refrigerant to the cabinet, and they cool right at the place where the heat is generated. And the result of that is a 40% reduction in power, a 25% reduction in CapEx, a 50% reduction in OpEx, and a dramatic improvement in reliability, because that whole chiller plant infrastructure and crack units is now replaced by one unit, which is about 10 feet long, 4 feet wide, 6 feet high. It's really game-changing. And there's nothing really to it. It's one pump that moves refrigerant out to the different cabinets. So essentially, rather than having a big refrigerator, which is what a data center is, we have little fridges. So there's one company here, TELUS. I don't know if Lloyd is here, but it's going to take intelligent risk-taking to become a leader in the marketplace. So I always applaud people who say, you know what? Nobody's done it before. It sounds really interesting. I'm probably betting my career and job, but I'm going to go do it because if it works, it's a game changer. So this is the kind of stuff that we feel makes sense to invest behind. And this is the kind of stuff that we think is really a game changer. Another area is we're constantly being compromised. Nations, this is the issue of security. Nations are attacking corporations and governments with advanced persistent threats for the purpose of stealing and monetizing data. And they're doing this to disrupt critical infrastructure and business operations. And we're just beginning to see the start of major cyber warfare. And this is no joke now. This is professional. This is well-funded organizations. These are sophisticated malicious entities that are getting involved in purposeful sabotage. This is like war that's happening. These aren't kids, hackers, that are out having fun. This is bad stuff. So one of the investments that we have is in a company called Mandiant. They are the leading authority on finding these types of threats and remediating them. But we've got to go beyond that. I mean, that's too late. The statistics say that On average, when we find a problem on our network, somebody trying to do really bad stuff, they've been there for 40 months. 40 months. So all these open doors, these apps that I just mentioned, all these communication services, they're all open doors for bad people to walk through. So now we're going to have more and more bad people we have to find on these networks, and we can't do it after the fact. So there's a company called ISC8, and they have a product called Cyber Adapt, which I think is really interesting. And what they're doing is they look for patterns. So they look for fingerprints and tactics, behavior of attacks. So they know, okay, at 3 o'clock, this customer service person is going to this proxy server and changing somebody's profile every day. Like, that doesn't make sense. That there's something wrong there. But how do you find that in real time? And how do you prove that that's really something bad that's happening? So what they're doing is grinding through massive amounts of big data to identify these threats and these behaviors. So they're looking at protocols, ports, session flows, applications, looking at all this and trying to correlate this, which is really interesting, because if we don't have a way to lock down the network, that's the one thing that can really take us down. If all of a sudden, and look what happened. Just a couple of days ago, right? The Associated Press, their Twitter account got hacked. Right? Did people aware of that? You hear about that in the press? And they posted that the White House had been attacked by terrorists and President Obama was hurt. Okay, in seconds, the Dow went down 143 points, destroying $200 billion in market value. $200 billion, like this, just because one hack, $200 billion. And imagine somebody who, saw that, called up their broker, sold their securities, they were like their life savings, and all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, they realize, oops, sorry, do-over. So this is an area, I think, that from an investment standpoint, that we're all going to be struggling with, but it's a real opportunity. This is a real opportunity if you can get it right. So in closing, I said, think about if we told everyone, because I do this at dinner, I take all my kids and I collect all their devices before we sit down with dinner so they're not distracted. Imagine if I told everybody when you checked in that you'd have to leave your devices. Just imagine how everyone would feel. I mean, everyone would turn around and go home. Why? Because this is part of our life now. This is the way we live, and we can't live without it. So we have to basically say this is what's happening. It's only going to continue to move in that direction, more connectivity, more devices, being more connected. We're going to continue to see all these services that they're coming over the top, they're coming from every direction. We can't ignore them, we can't wall off anymore. We're going to have to participate. And, Charles Darwin said it, he said it the right way. He said, to survive, you must evolve. So we're here today because we want to participate in the evolution. And we need to be close to you as our valued customers to figure out how to make that evolution happen. How are we going to evolve together? So Charlie's going to now come up and talk to you more specifically about GENBAND and some of the things that they're doing to assist in this important evolution. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I hope you enjoy the show. I look forward to chatting with anyone. I'm going to be here for the duration, so feel free to come up and chat with me if you have anything you'd like to discuss. I love interacting with you guys. I know a lot of you, and once again, thanks for making the effort.